All right, as you guys know already, John Harbaugh is in North Jersey. He's meeting today, Wednesday, with the Giants in his first in-person visit to a team's training facility. Harbaugh's in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Our Giants beat writer for the Post, Paul Schwartz, has been all over the Giants and the Harbaugh courting, and he's on for a very special Blue Rush, I guess, coaching search edition. Paul, is courting, is that the right word to use? I mean, private jets and dinners, that's courting, right?
Well, everyone gets dinners. Not everyone gets private jets. I can guarantee you that. You get private jets once in a while, right?
A little something here, a little something there. The
Yeah.
Victor Cruz
When's
treatment.
the last time? When's the last time you sat in the middle seat?
Ooh, I think a flight to
You're not
Germany like 2 years ago.
in a middle seat. Good Lord.
All right.
Oh man, with that leg room. Oh man, no good. Look, the Giants have made no secret since I think it was January 6th that Harbaugh was fired. That this is the guy that they want. Now, there's a lot of good candidates. Mike McCarthy was in the building yesterday. Kevin Stefanski was the first guy they brought into the building. Those are two very strong candidates. But there's only one John Harbaugh, and the only thing that would have trumped John Harbaugh is if Mike Tomlin came out. He stepped down from the Steelers, but he's not coming back to coaching this year. He'll probably go into TV or take a year off. So the Giants were all in on Harbaugh from the start. Phone calls, having people call in their behalf. So it's been a full court press for John Harbaugh. And what is important today is that Harbaugh narrowed his list to the Giants, the Falcons, and the Titans. And I spoke to someone in John Harbaugh's camp yesterday that said he's going to visit these teams, and by the end of the weekend, we should know something. I was also told that if you get him in the building, I asked, look, is it the kind of thing where he's going to go in, he's going to talk to the first team, and then he's going to go to the second team and the third team, regardless of if they, show up in a Lamborghini filled with $100 million and, the keys to the kingdom? Is he going to still make these trips? And the person who's close to Harbaugh told me that if I was an owner and John Harbaugh was in your building, it would behoove you to do everything possible to not let him leave the building without a contract. Maybe that will happen. Maybe that won't happen. But I think it could happen.
So translation, you like me, but show me that you love me. If they want him, they're going to have to go out and get him. So what do you think is going to take for Joe Schoen and ownership to lock this thing up and not allow John Harbaugh to leave the building?
Look, John Harbaugh is a smart guy. He spent 18 years in this league. And if you think of it, he's not some superstar head coach. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame head coach. But does he carry himself like a superstar, like a above it all guy? He's a grinder, right? Mm-hmm. He was a special teams guy. He never impresses me as a guy who thinks too highly of himself. So I think I know he has done tremendous research on these teams, the quarterbacks, the salary cap, the dead money, the staffs, the support system, the facilities. I mentioned salary cap money, free agency, all these things. John Harbaugh is a smart guy. He has brought in people that he knows, personnel people around the league, to help him with this. Tell me what you think of their roster. Let's look at Jaxson Dart. Let's look at Cam Ward, all these things. So he's going to know a lot of that walking into the building. What he doesn't know and can't know till he gets in there is the vibe, the feel. Is there a personal connection? He's talked to Joe Schoen on the phone. John Mara has talked to Harbaugh's camp. We know that Chris Mara, John's younger brother, he's a personnel guy for the Giants, went to Baltimore to have lunch with John Harbaugh and had a meeting with him at John Harbaugh's house. Eli Manning has spoke to him. Brian Daboll has spoke to Harbaugh. I heard that Harbaugh reached out to Brian Daboll. Just, what do you think here? And from what I understand, Brian Daboll said great things about the franchise, great things about Jaxson Dart, and great things about Joe Schoen. Now, don't forget, Joe Schoen didn't fire Brian Daboll. The owners did, but Joe Schoen is still in the building and Brian Daboll is not. So any animosity or hard feelings, I believe, was not present. So, Harbaugh got a really good cross-section of what the Giants are all about. But, Brandon, you have to get in the building, get a feel, look around, So I think all of that has to be A+ home runs for this to work out today. That John Harbaugh walks around the building and I can work with Joe Schoen. I like the Mara family. Steve Tish, he flew me here. This facility feels like home. I met the guy at the front desk. I met the woman in the lunchroom. And you know what? I want to work here. If all those things don't add up, he can go on to the next spot because he's in high demand.
I mean, that cafeteria is definitely a selling point. It's what keeps me in the building. But you mentioned the chance of him being able to be face to face with Joe Schoen. John Harbaugh is respected. He comes with the credentials. But like you said, he and Joe Schoen really don't know each other. How would that dynamic work if he does decide to take the job?
Here's another thing. Do you look at John Harbaugh from what you know, right, from the outside looking in, right? We all have, perceptions here. We don't know exactly. Do you look at him as it's my team, it's my way, I don't want to collaborate? I don't think that's what he is. Don't forget, he started in the league with Ozzie Newsome, who was a very strong general manager. And John Harbaugh did not have final say with Ozzie Newsome, I can tell you that. And then you Eric DeCosta, and Eric DeCosta was said the other day that he was, the reports are that he was basically crying when he had to tell John Harbaugh that he's no longer going to be the coach of the Ravens. They had a great relationship. Does Harbaugh command more input than a first-year coordinator, head coach? Of course he does. He's John Harbaugh. Yep. He's been there 18 years in the league. He's won a Super Bowl. I would remind everybody he won a Super Bowl in 2012. That's a long time ago, considering the Giants won a Super Bowl after the 2011 season, and we think that the Giants have been bad forever, right? So, and one other thing to remember off topic about John Harbaugh, he's only won 3 playoff games with Lamar Jackson in the last several years, and Lamar Jackson won 2 MVPs. So there are no perfect candidates here, but John Harbaugh is an elite candidate, and he's been an elite head coach. There are reasons why everyone gets fired, right? Did he grow stale there? Maybe he did. But I don't, and Joe Schoen is a collaborator. Joe Schoen is not a dictatorial, George Young, I knew George Young when he was with the Giants, and he wasn't a dictator either, but George Young was a very strong general manager. He had final say, and a lot of times Bill Parcells was not happy about that. And I know for a fact, because I covered Dan Reeves was not happy about that either. Joe Schoen is different. He listens, he collaborates. I talked to a lot of scouts on his staff, and they say, he listens to what we say. Now he makes the final decision, but he doesn't say, okay, I'm the GM, you're a scout, I'll tell you what you need to know. He wants to listen. You don't think he's going to present himself to John Harbaugh today and say, John, I need you. I want you to be in this building. We're going to work at this together. And if we have disagreements, we'll work them out. And it's not going to be this, I have final say, you have final say. If they're not going to change the power structure completely for John Harbaugh, but they'll tweak it because Joe Schoen's not an idiot. And he knows when you have John Harbaugh as your head coach, you tweak things.
Yeah, I think it also works in Joe Schoen's favor as well because, no disrespect to Brian Dable, but he's not going to have to worry about being a GM and having to sit in on the headsets during a game to see what the communication is like between the head coach and the defensive coordinator and his coaches. I think Harbaugh commands that type of respect or he has it to where you feel good about what he's going to be doing, not only when it comes to respect with other coaches, but just his overall process. And you mentioned the success that he was able to have with 2-time league MVP Lamar Jackson, but that duo wasn't able to get over the hump, beat Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, and win a Super Bowl. So how do you think that he's going to be in terms of the good of Jaxson Dart's development?
Well, that's the interesting thing, right? If you have a Kevin Stefanski, right, he's a guy who's very good with quarterbacks. If you have a Mike McCarthy, who's a guy who's very, very good with quarterbacks, right? When you have a John Harbaugh, the question is, who is his offensive coordinator? And how will he be with Jaxson Dart? John Harbaugh is a real CEO-type head coach. He's involved in everything, but it is imperative that he brings in great offensive and defensive coordinators because he doesn't run the offense and he doesn't run the defense. Does he bring Todd Monken with him from Baltimore? Todd Monken's got a good relationship, a good reputation around the league working with quarterbacks. And did things go a little haywire with Lamar Jackson? They did. I think a lot of that's Lamar Jackson. Some of that might be the coaching staff. Jaxson Dart is not Lamar Jackson in terms of talent, ability, comportment, attitude, anything. He's his own guy. So I think John Harbaugh will be good for Jaxson Dart. And I think Jaxson Dart is certainly a very strong selling point for John Harbaugh. He's 63 years old. He's not looking to take it slow in 2026. Maybe we'll find a quarterback. If he goes somewhere else, we'll figure it out. He's had two quarterbacks in his career, basically. He came into this Ravens in 2008, and they drafted Joe Flacco. He had Joe Flacco, and then he had Lamar Jackson. He is not in on a quarterback chase here. With Jaxson Dart, he won't be chasing anything. So, but it is imperative, and I know the Giants were very adamant. Whoever we bring in, we need strong staff and strong coordinators because they don't think Brian Daboll had an especially strong staff and coordinators, especially this past year. So, if John Harbaugh can't bring in a good staff and good coordinators, who can, right?
Yeah, and it's almost like he has a mixture in those two quarterbacks you mentioned, in Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson. You've got a mixture of those two guys in one guy in the Jaxson Dart. Big arm like a Flacco, athletic-ish enough to be kind of considered, in that Lamar Jackson category or that department. So, I mean, when it comes to bringing in an offensive coordinator for Jaxson Dart, it's almost like it'd be easier to bring in someone that can help develop Jaxson Dart as opposed to Lamar Jackson because Lamar has such a unique skill set that he can get by on his athleticism. Jaxson Dart can move around and make things happen with this athleticism, but he's not as dynamic. So you do get to bring in that X's and O's coordinator that's going to work with him to see things before that they develop, see things before it happens. So it sounds like they're all in. It sounds like they're going to throw the house to him. Two-part question, Paul. How much money do you think it's going to cost to bring him in? And if they can't land John Harbaugh, then who do they pivot to?
Well, just follow the numbers, right? I mean, John Harbaugh made $17 million a year with the Ravens. That's probably a starting point, I would guess. Andy Reid's the highest paid coach in the league at $20 million. Does John Harbaugh come in and say, I want 21? He's on the free agent market. As we all know, free agents get paid a little more than they should get. I've been told that this is not going to be a complete, absolute money grab, that John Harbaugh's like, I'm going to break the bank and I'm going to siphon every dollar out of the team that hires me. But he's also John Harbaugh, and he's 63 years old, and this will probably be his final contract in the NFL. So you got to pay him commensurate with what he should get. That is not going to be an issue from the Giants. I don't expect them to come in and say, whoever gives me $25 million a year, I'm going to. I just don't think that's the way it's going to work out. And I think also John Harbaugh wants a lot of money for his staff, and the Giants have to be willing to pay more than they paid for staffs in the past. If John Harbaugh says, I want this coordinator, and it's going to cost you $4.5 million a year to get him, the Giants can't balk at that. You know what I mean? If I want this defensive coordinator and I got to pay him to be the highest paid defensive coordinator in the league, the Giants going to have to say, okay, to get John Harbaugh, he runs a big program. Big programs take big money. Where do they pivot from here? I guess, you know what? I'll come on the next few days and we'll talk about that. I do think they have options. I think Stefanski is a legitimate option. I think McCarthy is a legitimate option. Is Vance Joseph a legitimate option? I don't know. Maybe Raheem Morris. I mean, you could do worse with either of those guys, right? They're former head coaches. They command the room. In most cycles, these guys would be terrific candidates, and they are. You go, I don't think they want to go to the coordinator route and somebody who hasn't been a head coach before, but there's some good ones in this cycle. Kubiak, Jesse Minter, you hear great things about Jesse Minter, right? So I don't think with this team, at this feel right now, they want to do that, but that would be a fallback position. I think it's Harbaugh a bust right now, and then they kind of reassess and things like that. I have one thing for you, Brandon, is a guy who sat in a room with coaches, okay? Tom Coughlin was a certain guy who commanded a room, right? So if you're sitting there, right, you're your second or third guy, your receiver, you're a decent player, but you're nothing special. You got to make the team and things like that, right? When John Harbaugh comes in for his first team meeting, okay, and this, as opposed to Stefanski or even McCarthy or any of the guys, when he walks into that room, okay, and it's Dexter Lawrence and it's Burns and it's Dart and it's Scatterbo and it's Neighbors and it's all these guys, young and old, right, from 35 to 22. What do you think their their mindset and their reaction is when he takes that podium for the first time as the head coach of the Giants?
First thing that happens, Paul, when you're sitting there, you're on the phone and you're going back and forth about whichever new Rolls Royce or Bentley you're going to buy or purchase. You see him walk in, you sit up, take your hat off, take your do-rag off, whatever it is. You sit there, you get your little notebook out. They probably don't even use pen and paper anymore, but you sit there, you sit up, you look, and you're like, all right, it's time to go. Let's go. As opposed to a Stefanski or even like a Chris Shula, who I'm high on, or the Clint Kubiak, when they come in, you still sit up. You still show that respect. But at the same time, you're waiting to hear what they're going to sell to you. Harbaugh already comes in, and he's already had the gold. He's already been there. So you're listening to that message like, okay, it's time. This is the guy that's going to get us over the hump and get us back to getting some wins. So it would be great to bring him in, especially since Mike Tomlin looks like he's not going to be coaching. But I'm with you on this one, Paul. They can't let him out of the building. And if they want to sell him on the in-game entertainment, I'll come in, talk to him, show him what great of an in-game MC that the Giants have. I think that will be the deal breaker right there, Paul. What saith you?
maybe we give him a free pass, 10 free passes to any Blue Rush episode he wants to, a podcast he wants to come to. Look, I mean, I get it. This can't let him out of the building. Yeah. I get, but if it's going to take a lot, and it's going to take a lot, and just because he leaves doesn't mean he's not going to be the head coach of the Giants. I'm painting a picture that they can make it happen, which I think they can. But if John Harbaugh has 0.1% of doubt, he probably owes it to himself to go to the next team. You know what I mean? And that won't be great for the Giants, but that doesn't mean he's not going to come back to them. And only he knows if he's thinking this is my first trip. It could be my last, or if he's thinking, no, I want to hear. I'm very intrigued by Cam Ward and Tennessee and Mike Borgonzi, and I'm intrigued by $100 million in cap space, and I'm going to hear what they have to say, no matter what the Giants say. Or he looks at he looks at the Falcons and says, Arthur Blank, and they're the best team, right? They won a bunch of games to end the season. Not so sure about Michael Penix Jr. as the quarterback, but I owe it to myself to go to Atlanta and hear what the Falcons say. I'm sure there's a lot of private jets for all these teams that they can send to get Harbaugh there. So I mean, I don't think it should be panic city if the Giants don't lock this up today. But I think there's a chance they can. That's all. But like you said, what is it going to take to not let him leave the building? I mean, they could put him in shackles and lock the door, and then we got some issues. So I just think it depends on what his mindset is, but I think there will at least be a opportunity. I don't know how much of an opportunity to get it done today and have him cancel those other interviews.
Cam Ward and $100 million in cap space. I'm picking up that phone and I'm taking that trip to Nashville. So we'll hold off on that right now. But Paul, thanks for making yourself available. Thank you for the reports, man. You're absolutely killing it. And thank you guys for watching Blue Rush.